Welcome, folks, to part 2 and what will be the verdict of this short little series about which is the best race in Bleach. Man, I'm excited. Please hit that like and subscribe button, comment, so let's get right to it. In the last video, I said that the most contentious part was the defense section, but I'm taking that back. It's this one, and we're going to talk about why. So I'm going to do this one a bit different than I did the other rounds. I'm going to just go into them in no particular order, and then I'll talk about my decision at the end. The first group I want to talk about offensively is the one we know the least about, I guess, and that's the Fullbringers. I want to talk about them first because I think people underestimate them so much because they really don't get the ability to shine like the Quincy's and the Hollows and the Soul Reapers do. I've even heard people call their power sets gimmicky, but to be honest, you could really say that about anyone's ability in Bleach. I'll even give you a quick example. If you were to even the power of Yuha in Tsukishima, you'd have a very compelling battle on your hands because we know that his Book of the End can counteract some of the effects that you get from the Almighty. Even when we look at someone like Giriko's Time Tells No Lies, this ability really is just as broken as Respira and some of these other things we see in the series. He can basically set conditions for anything he wants as long as he puts a timer on it. And in its enhanced form, after he gets stronger from taking the powers from Ichigo, the simpler the terms of the thing he makes, the stronger the ability is. So he basically has almost no limit to his power, and if you were fighting someone on equal footing with him, he'd probably have an advantage. At the end of Can't Feel Your World Volume 2, Giriko was able to make a 20-second timer that allowed him, Tsukishima, and Ginjo to completely go invisible and hide all traces of their spirit energy so that they could run through an army of hollows. Hammering home the broken abilities, Yukio was able to completely cut off Karakura Town from the rest of the universe. No one could get in or out without his say-so, and I mean literally no one. Not the Soul Society, not someone trying to use Bank, nothing got them out. Some people have expressed the view that they think the Shinigami should run away with this because of the Kido abilities that they have, but other races can match Kido, and with the Fullbringers, it's their Soul Subjugation abilities. I talked about Soul Subjugation in my last video, and basically put anything you can do with Kido, you can also do with the Soul Subjugation ability. You want to make a Fire Ice Dragon from Kido, you can do that with the Fullbring ability. One final tidbit that I wanted to talk about with the attack abilities of the Fullbringers is one that no one ever really talks about but gets brought up in Can't Feel Your Own World, is you can weaken your opponent as you're fighting them if you can make physical contact. At the start of Can't Feel Your Own World 2, when Shuhei is fighting Aura and the other Fullbringers in the world of the living, we notice that every time the constructs that they create touches Shuhei, his power dwindles further and further, and he's already under Gentei Kaijo, and he notes that it feels like as if someone's increasing the power of Gentei Kaijo on him. And so much like the shrifts we're going to talk about shortly, Fullbring abilities aren't just like some random thing that's bestowed. It's based on the person's personality and their traits, meaning just like you can have any almighty level ability or something as low as the yourself, you can have the same thing when it comes to Fullbring abilities. So hopefully I convinced you that they can compete with the other three on this list. I want to do the Quincy next for one specific reason, because I want to talk about what makes this list the way it is, because some people still seem to not understand. This list is not about picking one great feat from one particular person in a race, or picking the strongest example of a person we had from that race, because if we did something like that, this list would just be Quincy, Quincy, Quincy all the way down, because honestly, all the things we've seen from the strongest attack to the strongest defense to the most hacks ability, it's all Yuha, and this would just be why is Yuha so great video. Just because one particular group has the strongest character in the series does not make them the best. But now let's just jump into the Quincy, particularly my favorite race in the series. First, I want to cover the Hylic Bogan, which is the bow that Quincy's create from the spirit energy around them. Quincy can absorb the natural spirit energy in the air and create bows and weapons from these things. They don't always have to be bows, but it is emphasized that the aesthetic for Quincy are bows. Next are Hylic File, which are the arrows or energy projections that they shoot at their opponents. Now, Hylic File can be shot straight, side to side, and even backwards. We see this actually in one of the first displays of the Hylic File. Uryu starts shooting arrows facing away from him and killing hollows accurately with it. The Quincy are even capable of channeling this natural spirit energy through metals, like we see with the Zayla Schneider sword and even the Quincy Still Silver arrow that they use to defeat Yuha. Quincy also do have their own version of Kido, which Quincy spells. They do need Ginto to use them, so it is kind of cheating technically, but because it does require a chant and prep time and their own spirit energy, I'm allowing it. As I talked about before, Quincy's have their own way of competing with the broken abilities like Respira and Yamamoto's Bankai and the Fullbring abilities, and that's the Shrifts. The Shrifts, like I mentioned before, are based off of one's personality and abilities, and they're granted by Yuha for the most part. And like I said before in my previous video, we do see that there are natural ways to seem to get these abilities. But as I said earlier with Yuha, when we look at the sheer scope of what Shrifts can do, they're just broken. You have something as powerful as the Almighty, which allows you to look at a future possibility and apply it to the current present you're living in. You even have things like the Balance, which give balance to a fight, basically shifting a fight in your advantage whenever you're in a disadvantageous position. The X-axis, the Miracle, yada yada, the list goes on. One last bit I want to add to the Quincy arsenal is Blute Artery. Now, we technically don't really get to see it. However, we do know it exists and we do know what it does. Basically, it's the opposite of the Blute Vein ability. Blute Vein allows you to boost your defense by pushing Reishi through your body. This is the opposite. Blute Artery, it increases your attack power by pushing it through most likely your Halig file or whatever weapon you're using. Moving on to the final bit, we have their transformation ability. Now we have two. We have the Lead Steel and we have the Volstanic, like we see here with Bambietta's. And there is a difference, and I'm going to talk about them. The Lead Steel basically allows a Quincy who isn't a Stern Ritter, and it's kind of implied the Stern Ritters could do it too if they wanted to, but basically allows them to lock their complete full potential in one go. And then the Volständig gives them a similar boost to maybe Shikai or Bankai when they transform. It's not exactly confirmed, but we do know that they get stronger when we see that Robert Acutron's speed drastically increases when he's fighting Shunsui. At first glance, the Hollows might not seem to have the arsenal that the other races do, but best believe they can compete with the best of them. At first glance, I actually thought they would be in last place because they just didn't seem to have the full scope of abilities, but when I looked into it, they actually do. First, let's talk about the Sero ability. Now, the Sero basically is an amped attack. It actually amplifies their spirit energy and shoots it out as a contained energy blast, which could completely disintegrate their opponent. They also have other forms like Bala, which increases the speed of the attack but takes down the heat on it, but it increases its concussive force. This gives the Hollows a level of versatility and an ability to counter a lot of the multi-layered Kido that you see. We even see someone like Geo Vega use his Sero to counter one of Soifon's Bakudo. I honestly think this is how Hollows even the field against Kido. Like you see here with Tear Hollybell, she can change the shape of her Sero and its arc and length. This is dangerous, especially when we see now that there are advanced forms of Sero that come in ball shape, like the Grand Ray Sero, which is like a magnitude of 5 or 10, and then the Sero Oscutus, which can be used by Espada in their transformed resurrection forms. Speaking of resurrection forms are actually more akin to Shikai than Bankai. I know there was a statement from Kisuke that says Bankai, but it's actually Shikai. And we kind of also know this because recently Kubo, and thanks to someone in the comments, reminded me that Kubo emphasized that Segunda Etapa can be achieved by other Espada if they train hard enough. So they can actually get a second form of power, and this is where we see all the crazy broken abilities from the Hollows. And by that I just mean the resurrection form, not Segunda Etapa specifically. We also do have examples of the Espada or Arrancar Hollows using their special abilities in their base forms, like Badagon using his senescence ability in his base, being able to slow down time or speed it up around his body. So you're about to notice a theme here. Hollows' hearts leave their bodies and become their masks. Their masks represent who they are and what they are, and oftentimes you get a hint at what their powers are from this. And just like with the Shrift and the Fullbring, this is basically saying that their powers can be whatever they want. Whatever their soul determines their personality to be, that's kind of what ends up being their ability. Finally, here we are with the Soul Reapers and the Zanpakuto. Now, I'm going to jump right into Bankai and Shikai because I want to explain something that some people are probably wondering. Now, I can hear most of you saying, wait, shouldn't the Shinigami just win this period because they have the Shikai and the Bankai and they win most of the fights? And I'd actually like to say no. The reason is because when it comes to some of the later fights against the stronger characters in the series, like during FKT and the 1000-Year Blood War, the only reason that the Shinigami tend to win is because of Ichigo or their already inherent advantage in the knowledge of the world. But getting back on track, Shikai and Bankai with the Zanpakuto is one of the coolest abilities in the series, and the reason they are getting included is because they are basically one with their opponent. It's no different really for me I know they're technically an invention, but it really is no different from an Arrancar using the weapons they make from their body or their resurrection forms. It's a part of their soul. You are the blade. And here I am saying it for the fourth time. One's Zanpakuto is based on their soul. Your powers and abilities are based on your personality. Like, your Shikai will most likely represent your outward personality. And like Soifon, for example, Suzume Bachi, she wants to be an assassin, 2 stings, 1 kill. Then you get to her Bankai. Her Bankai is a 1-shot, 1-kill missile, over the top, crazy, which on the inside, Soifon is very passionate, but she tries to hide it behind a level of professionalism. And on the surface, it looks like the Soul Reapers have the most diverse set of abilities. You have Zanjutsu, Hakudo, Kido, and Ho-Ho, and they have different forms and abilities within these little breakdowns and categories. And on top of that, there is a formal academy to teach these things. So you would think, based on these attack forms, they should have the advantage. With over 198 Kido in the series, which creates a lot of variety and variability, and in a formal swordsman and hand-to-hand combat classes, it doesn't actually get them the advantage because we see that other races have these variety of abilities like different Sero and different Quincy spells. And on top of that, we see a lot of characters like Ukiura, who you might be able to consider a master swordsman, matching swings with Ichigo, and they don't really have a formal system. Just like the other races, the main ability, the Zanpakuto for the Soul Reapers, is just broken. You have people like Yamamoto with flames as hot as the sun, and you even have people like Ichibei with Zanpakuto like Ichimonji and his Bankai, which basically gives him concept control, a whole meta ability that you don't see with any of the other things in Bleach. Things really start to look up for the Soul Reapers when you think about that they can combine these fields like Hakudo with Kido and create Shunko, which basically amps their physical attacks while still giving them elemental and spirit energy damage when they hit things. They even have long range abilities with these new Kido Hakudo combinations, so they don't have to get close to their opponent. We've seen that Shunko is so strong that it basically replaces Zanpakuto. It also took a filler arc for us to explore the concept of combining Shunko with a Zanpakuto. Then again, it does take a lot of training, so it kind of does make sense. But overall, the Zanpakuto, the Kido, and the ability to combine these fields gives the Shimigami an extremely powerful position to take the #1 spot when it comes to attack power. But here's my verdict. Alright, please hear me out and don't kill me. Just listen to my reasoning, please. I don't feel like attack-wise any race really takes it away from another one. When I look at, let's just go to transformations. You could say, well, the Shimigami have Shikai and Bankai, but the Quincy also have their Vollständig. And if we're really going to get extreme, they have the Ledge Steel, which technically is a bigger boost than Bankai is. And if we go even further, we know that Hollows can go into Resurrection, and they could potentially have a Segunde Etapo, which is basically Bankai. And when we look at the Fullbringers, they don't need to transform because 1, we know their Fullbringers can evolve, and 2, they can use Soul Subjugation, so you can keep trying to enhance yourself, and they could keep just decreasing your power as it goes. Then when I look at supplemental attacks like Kido, like I said before, you have Quincy spells, you have Sero. I even forgot to mention in the Hollow section that Hollows can use their blood to enhance Seros. And not just with the Grand Ray Sero, it's mentioned in Can't Figure a World. Not sure how canon that is, but he said he talked to Kubo, so I'm going with it for now. And on top of that, again, the Fullbringers, there isn't anything a Fullbringer can't do, so... And if you try to argue that the Soul Reapers win because of the sheer variety, well, it kind of still applies to Quincy's and Fullbringers as well, because Quincy's can use different weapons and Reishi armor, and again, Fullbringers can manipulate whatever they want. They could really turn the entire battlefield into something completely different. If you were twisting my arm because you can possibly combine Shunko with a Zanpakuto, maybe, then I would say the Soul Reapers, but I'm calling a draw for this round. One last lightning round for X Factor. I'm giving this one to Reishi Domination because, I mean, really, do I really need to describe it? It can absorb the other two. It's that simple. So, get ready for the verdict, guys. And with a shocking first place finish, we have the Quincy. I really didn't think they were going to win. I had my money on the Hollows. And tied for second place, we have the Hollows and the Fullbringers. Man, this is really shocking to me because my second place pick was the Fullbringers. And pulling up the rear in a shocking defeat, we have the Soul Reapers. They did not win a single category. But to be honest, this really isn't shocking to me because when it comes to advantages, they don't really have any. And to be fair, they only win their fights because of the equipment. If I had included equipment and inventions, they would have ran away with this list by a mile. Oh my god, this video series blew up on this channel. Thank you all for subscribing and liking the video. I appreciate it. I hope you stay and enjoy more of my videos. Have a good night, guys. Bye.